for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I am your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele Baroni for Jack Prince.
Yes, we are doing this by phone. We'll explain why in just a minute. We have got quite a few topics to discuss. The final debate happened Thursday evening. We have to talk about the death of former Italian ambassador Pete Secchia, and lots more goodies, folks. But before we get to that, a couple reminders that you can follow us on social media. You can go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr, southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can find us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio there. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. You can find us at Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. Links to our podcast are sent to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. You can also listen to us every Saturday at 11 p.m. on Global Community Radio Channel 1, and you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, and KZGM in Kabul, Missouri. All right, and before we get started, I do have a correction from last week that I have to mention. During our discussion of the plot to kidnap and murder Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, I said that there were 16 arrests made. I don't know where 16 came from. The actual number is 14. So, sorry about that. I don't know where it came from. Probably
as long as we're not those extra two.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and actually a little bit later on in the show, we'll talk about more kidnapping plots. But let's get into our first topic, and that is Thursday evening, the final debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Wow. I caught about an hour of it, and I know when it's time to stop watching the debate when I start yelling, "Cut his mic" at the television.
Yeah, that's usually how I know I started watching it.
Yeah.
Last night was really, really difficult, though, because I think all of us saw the last one and saw how off the hook it was, like with them just literally, you couldn't understand anything they were saying, to this time when it was very, like, I mean, they took their time and they were measured with their words a lot more than last time, but the fact that that was what was coming out of their mouth after they thought it through was terrifying to me. Like, the way they were arguing over, like, which one of them had stolen more of our money. And
oh,
I mean, at least Joe Biden actually displayed humanity, which, and I'm going to be honest, I think that might have been the first time I felt sincerity from him, ever.
To be fair, in comparison to Trump, there is no humanity in Trump, so anything that even resembles humanity is better than what you get with Trump.
And that's probably why it was the first time I noticed it. But, you know, obviously I'll take that over somebody that's completely racist and inhumane. But, man, and talk about triggered. He is so easily triggered.
Mm-hmm. He certainly is. I have this story. This is Joel Shannon writing for USA Today from Thursday evening. Here's a portion of the debate that I missed. And it was the moment where Trump said that he's done more for black people than any other president, with maybe the exception of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, he just keeps doubling down on this Abraham Lincoln thing. I don't get it.
I don't either. Well, here's the story. The mention of Abraham Lincoln's name on Thursday night became one of the most memorable exchanges in the final presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. As the debate turned to a discussion of the Black Lives Matter movement, Biden jabbed Trump for his earlier boast that no president since Lincoln has helped black people more than he has. Biden said of Trump, quote, Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire, every single one. End of quote. So Trump responded, quote, he made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? End of quote. Biden responded, quote, you said you're Abraham Lincoln. End of quote. Trump said, quote, no, I didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. End of quote.
Oh, my God. Why does he not get
it? Because he's dumb. That's why.
Oh, I just can't.
What was it the college professor said of Trump? He was the dumbest goddamn student I ever had.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And that's a direct quote.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Trump has a history of comparing himself to Lincoln, the country's 16th president. His comments Thursday night echoed one he made earlier this year when he said he had done more for the black community than any president before adding, quote, let's take a pass on Abraham Lincoln, end of quote.
Oh, my gosh.
Last year, Trump claimed that no other president had been treated as badly by the press as he has, including Lincoln.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of press back then.
Oh, yeah. In 2017, Trump told a rally in Youngstown, Ohio, that he can be more presidential than anyone else who has been president, quote, with the exception of the late, great Abraham Lincoln, end of quote. Is that really how Trump sees himself, as the second coming of Abe Lincoln?
Proudly, apparently.
I guess. Wow. The debate moment became one of the most widely talked about exchanges on social media.
We are such a joke.
Oh my God. We're worse than a joke. We're a hot garbage
bad.
fire.
I was so ashamed to be American last night. I really was, listening to the whole conversation. Well, you were the one that bought the cages, but we only bought a few cages, and we didn't put a lot of kids in them unless we had to. Like that.
Yeah. And then we've got, since you're mentioning the kids in the cages, there are 545 children who have not been reunited with their parents. They are missing. That we separated from the border.
We knew that was going to happen because when they were separating, we said, hey, what are you guys doing to make sure we can find these kids again? And they said, oh, wait, nothing. We forgot. Yeah. And then they just kept taking them. So.
You and I both know they didn't forget. This was purposely done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still being coordinated through, and I'm just going to say it out loud, Bethany Christian Services is one of the main problems here. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody who works there is going to be facing the same wrath that DHS and ICE employees will be facing.
Yeah. And here's the thing. This isn't the first time in history that we have done this. We have historically done this with Native American children.
My mom was taken from her family as a newborn before they passed the ICWA in the 50s, before they even built the Mackinac Bridge. My grandparents drove all the way up around through Wisconsin to pick her up. We've never found my birth grandparents. So, firsthand experience with it. And it's infuriating to see it still happening and people denying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are kids, and here's the thing. All of Trump's supporters want to talk about save the children. Well, you know what? They're only caring about white children. They don't care about children of color at all.
Exactly.
Oh, boy. Well, I tell you what. Should we move on to another topic here? I'm debated out. I'm sick of this already.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly am kind of upset that Trump got another platform to spew out his racist BS when I feel like everybody kind of had their minds made up already. So... But it's over. We are getting closer and closer to this 2020 charade being over, which I'm going to be really relieved about.
Yeah, and this is going to be the last episode that we air in Kabul, Missouri before the election because we air on Wednesdays in that town. So to anybody listening to the sound of our voices in Kabul, Missouri, make sure you get out and vote. Vote.
Please go vote.
Get this. orange piece of hot garbage out of office, please.
We really need to talk about like actual issues instead of all this crap that we've been distracted with for so long now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Were there any other highlights of the debate other than it was great that they started muting microphones and Kristen Welker actually did a decent job of moderating and, you know, moving on to topics, even though Trump kept trying to talk over the top of her and pretty much succeeded for most of what I saw.
Yeah, he did. I would have, I think, shut him down a little bit more, but I think she did a good job. And yeah, a lot of people, I think going into that debate, if you liked Biden already, then you walked out thinking that he killed it.
Yep.
And going into it, if you liked Trump already, then you walked out thinking that he killed it. I don't know. I could be wrong there, but that was kind of the feeling I got, which was like, okay, did this do us any good at all?
Yeah, that's very true. Although I will say that the pundits out there have pretty much weighed in and have said that Joe Biden clearly won the debate.
I have heard people say that, but nobody that is honestly on the right has admitted it yet in front of me. So.
Oh no, of course not. And I'm gonna divert here for a quick second because last night I was on Facebook and that was a mistake number one. As many of you know, I've worked in the strip club industry. I was in that industry for over 25 years. I am proud that I was a member of that industry. I helped save that industry from legislation at the state level. I attempted to save it from legislation at the local level and was unsuccessful because, quite truthfully, I'll just say it in my opinion, DeVos money pushed the Grand Rapids ordinance through.
Oh, I'm sure. No doubt.
You can't convince me otherwise when the main person that was pushing for this legislation, a woman by the name of Judy Rose, who is now deceased, hopefully she's burning in hell, appears on a Rick DeVos ad when he was running for governor in 2006. So, yeah, there's no such thing as coincidence.
Yeah, if it's up to the DeVos family, then women will never, ever be able to own the rights to their body. So
exactly. Well, so last night I was on a friend's page, a bartender friend of mine who I've worked with at the club, and she feels the same way that I do about politics. And there's a guy that used to be a bouncer there. He now works for the county government, who started parroting all sorts of Trump trope about Sleepy Joe Biden, literally parroting that. And I finally just had enough and said, I can't believe that there's people that have worked in the strip club industry knowing that Republicans consistently try to shut down that industry. That's proven. And yet they go out and they vote for these idiots.
But let's keep in mind, though, those bouncers are wannabe cops.
True.
You know, too often they're just wannabe cops that, you know, either made too many enemies or got something on their record and couldn't get through the academy.
You know, I never thought of that, but you know what? You're right about that.
Yeah, you give somebody a little bit of power and they're thirsty for more. So I just think they're, probably not indicative of the rest of the people in the industry. And it's the same with the marijuana industry now. I mean, everybody they have for security is just a bunch of wannabe cops. And so you've got a bunch of wannabe cops working with a bunch of, like, proud stoners. It's an interesting world we're in.
Yeah, so I just totally went off on this person and just
good for you.
I told the truth as it was. Like, I can't believe how many idiots there are that work or have worked in the strip club industry that continue to vote Republican, vote for these politicians that tried to shut them down.
Yeah, and they talk about wanting jobs and needing jobs, and then they want to vote for the guy that's actually taking theirs.
You know, in 1999 and 2000, Republicans in the Michigan State Legislature tried to severely restrict strip clubs. Who was the only person from the West Michigan area that drove down to Lansing to the hearings? Me. I was it. Not anybody else from Parkway Tropics, not anybody from Sensations. Period. Right. I was there. When 2006, when the Grand Rapids city government started in with this, we're going to make all the girls cover up their boobs, only two people from the industry showed up, me and the day manager from Parkway. That was it.
I believe it. I was probably, to be fair, I was probably sitting at the bar at Teeny Bikinis because I was 25 and completely irresponsible.
In 2013, I believe, is the year when Judy Emmons started in on this again. I went on the air on this very show and debunked every single point she had. And I put so much pressure on, she dropped her efforts to do it.
Yeah,
and by
it's
the
really
way,
funny to hear your stories because I do remember all of this happening. I was young and not confident enough to speak up.
And by the way, I also attended hearings down there with the intention of testifying. But guess what? The Republicans ran it all, and so they wouldn't allow us to testify.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then about 2 or 3 years ago, some of the Democrats around the Detroit area decided to jump on the Republican bandwagon, and I called them out too.
Does not surprise me, I gotta say.
So, you know, like I said, it's just ridiculous. And I tell you what, somebody else that we should jump on right now. Boy, the whole West Michigan area is in mourning right now. At least the conservatives are mourning one of their icons. I actually heard that word used by Wood Television.
I prefer oligarch.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Italy, Pete Secchia, passed away earlier this week. He apparently had been having health troubles. He was involved in a car wreck a few years ago. It was him, his wife, and they were in the car with the then editor-in-chief of the Grand Rapids Press, Mike Lloyd, and his wife.
Okay.
So right there's your Republican influence in the media when you've got one of the biggest contributors to the GOP, the guy that pretty much built the GOP in Kent County, writing to a Michigan State, I believe it was a basketball game, with the editor-in-chief of the Grand Rapids Press.
I mean, that's how you get favorable news.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Secchia, they were in a car wreck. He was injured in that. It was pretty bad. They thought he was going to die then, I guess. He was injured pretty bad. But he had been in bad health for a number of years, and then he apparently got coronavirus at the end. Secchia was 83 years old. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up, folks.
Sweet justice, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
that one to grieve his death needs to consider the fact that he got 83 years, which is, I don't know, twice as long as what most of us are going to get now because of him. So,
yeah, I got the alert. I was shopping inside of a Meijer store when I got the alert from Wood TV that he had passed, and I literally fist pumped the air. That's how excited I was to hear about his death. I'm sorry if you folks think that we're being cruel about it. You know what? You ought to take a look at the cruelty of Pete Secchia. Matter of fact, I've got some examples of it here. These are actual quotes from Mr. Secchia during the Larry Nassar scandal, because that all took place with Michigan State University, which Secchia has been a major contributor to. Go green, go white.
He literally personally hand-built MSU into the school it is today by siphoning public money.
So here's the first quote. This is Secchia in an interview with WZZM television about why some parents stayed quiet about sexual abuse allegations made by Dr. Larry Nassar. Here's what he said. Quote, "Were they driven to have a gold medal or driven to have a child who is a star? Were they holding back on the information they had because they didn't want to embarrass their daughter?" End of quote. So, victim blaming.
Oh, yeah. That's what he does.
Here's the second. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'll never forget. I worked for a man who used to be one of the big manufacturing gurus. His parents originally started a manufacturing plant, died, and left him their money. But he was getting he had a lot of interaction with Secchia, and his daughter went to MSU. She was on the dance team or a gymnast. I can't remember which one, but she did go see Larry Nassar. And when all of this hit the news, I remember him coming into work the next day telling us all that, his daughter actually was a patient of Nassar's, but he never did anything to her. And he was basically like defending Larry Nassar against his own kid, like just because she didn't tell him that. So like, I just can't wrap my head around people like Pete Secchia and people like his friends that will literally sacrifice their own kids because of somebody's reputation, you know? Like, he's scum.
Exactly. Here's the second quote. This is Pete Secchia, again, in an interview to WZZM television about criticisms leveled against Michigan State University not taking action earlier against Nassar. Here's what he said. Quote, I would say to parents that if you don't feel comfortable with your children at Michigan State, take them somewhere else, because we've got a long list of people that want to go to Michigan State, and there are some wonderful people left. Leave. End of quote.
If you don't like it, leave. It's just a little fondling.
Mm-hmm. And then here's the last quote. Pete Secchia, outside the Wood TV studios prior to the first GOP gubernatorial candidate debate in May 2018. This was overheard by Larry Nassar victim Sterling Reithman. Here's what she heard Pete say, which he, by the way, denied. Quote, these girls are going to ruin the state of Michigan. We have to stop them. End of quote. And yet you've got the media in Grand Rapids, all of them, Wood TV, WZZM, WXMI, WWMT, the Grand Rapids Business Journal, the Grand Rapids Press, all of them canonizing Secchia. Well, you won't get it here, folks.
They're so gross.
Mm-hmm.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. I had a friend tell me about it. We were meeting for lunch, and I walked in and like, did you hear about Pete Secchia? And I was like, no, what happened? He died. I was like, what? Get a huge high five, like yelled out a whoop. Everybody's looking at me. I'm like, seriously, I can't help it. Like, if you spend your entire life like oppressing people and amassing power to use to just hurt other people, yeah, I'm going to celebrate your death. You spent your whole life killing people. It's your turn.
Mm-hmm. And upon hearing of Secchia's death, I immediately reached out to Jeff Smith and said, okay, I'm expecting the canonization to happen now. So when are you going to come out with an article telling the truth? And he said, oh, it'll be a few days. Well,
it was one.
He finally put it out last night. This is Jeff Smith writing for Grand Rapids Institute for Information Democracy. The headline reads, Bankrolling Hate and Harm on the Death of Peter Secchia. I'm just going to read some excerpts of it here. A few days have passed since the announcement that Peter Secchia has died. The local news media has done what one would expect. They have presented him as someone who loved Grand Rapids and has contributed to this community generously. Just look at some of the headlines. From MLive, the headline reads, Philanthropist, former U.S. Ambassador Peter Secchia has died. In fact, virtually all of the coverage in MLive, Wood TV 8, WZZM 13, WXMI 17, and the Grand Rapids Business Journal all use terms like philanthropist, former ambassador, businessman, and community advocate. The rest of the local news coverage includes a brief history of Secchia, how he came from humble beginnings, his ascent in Universal Forest Products, his community involvement, and his commitment to the Republican Party. The local news coverage also included condolences from various organizations that Secchia was involved in, including the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, Right Place, Inc., and the West Michigan Policy Forum. WXMI even included statements from the DeVos family, Mayor Rosalind Bliss, one of my favorite people in the entire world.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
And the bishop from the Grand Rapids Catholic Diocese.
So, head rapist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and of course, Jeff Smith rightly points out that Secchia was one of the members of the Grand Rapids power structure. So
absolutely. He actually, I believe, founded the Grand Rapids, while him and Engler did a lot of work together to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. Jeff continues by writing, there is not one bit of critical or controversial information presented in any coverage of Secchia's death. People might say that now is not the time to critically examine who Secchia was, and that it would be insensitive to offer any criticism while his family is in mourning. Bullshit. Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
His family.
Yep.
Just like he did ours for his entire life. I wish my kids could have gone to Michigan State, but he took public college and put it out of my kids' reach.
Exactly.
So that's how I feel about him.
Yep. Jeff continues, when someone is a public figure who not only used their wealth to influence power dynamics in Grand Rapids, but used their position with the GOP to push policies that negatively impacted millions, then this is the exact time to sound off.
Exactly.
It is true the Secchia had a foundation and contributed money to numerous projects, particularly to Michigan State University. However, like all philanthropists, we need to ask ourselves how Secchia became a multimillionaire. Was it simply because he worked hard, or does it have anything to do with how he was able to exploit resources and workers during his time at Universal Forest Products?
Bingo.
What about the property investment company called Sibsco that Secchia and his son started in the 1980s? There is no mention of how much property Secchia and his family own in any of the news coverage. And by the way, you can find it all out in the tax records, folks. Just do some digging.
Keep in mind, since you brought that up, I think I have to mention this right now, that, we've spent the last couple of years in Michigan working on our gerrymandering problem, right? Because we want to be able to have people vote fairly and have their votes be weighed equally. Well, when somebody like Secchia owns all of the property, they get to decide who lives where. You don't have to gerrymander anymore. You don't have to redraw lines. You just put white people in the areas where you need them, which has been happening ever since. And he, I think, kind of drew the template for using public money and transferring it to private money. And that's why him and the bosses do so much work together.
And as we mentioned on last week's show, it's not just putting white people in houses. It's also buying one-way bus tickets for people of color and saying, get out of town and don't come back.
Or just putting them right into jail, or, whatever else they have to do, whether it's impoverishing people and taking away their opportunities. It's so sick, and I don't know who's going to take over for him. That's the part I haven't even had a chance to look into yet. I do know who the CEO of Universal Forest Products is. I used to wait on him pretty regularly at my last job. Horrible person, but
yeah,
at least to the servers and bartenders. But I've looked into the history of Peter Secchia and how he made his money, and he was very fortunate to be very well connected. And when you have those kinds of resources, you almost have to be a real idiot not to end up like him, not to end up becoming a millionaire tycoon. Yeah. So I have no respect for that.
Yeah. I wonder if his kids, how politically active are his kids? Do you have any idea?
No, and that's a really good question. I know he has 4 of them, and when I was reading the article about his death, I kept thinking, oh no, who are they? They're probably already entrenched in our government, and I just don't know their names. So I'm going to look into that too.
I think one of them is Charlie.
Okay.
But I'm not really sure. I have to do some more digging into that. Jeff took a look at one of the projects that Secchia was behind called the Community Legends Project. Have you heard about this?
I haven't, but why do I feel like he's going to be a legend? Peter himself.
Yeah. So what this Community Legends Project is that they've erected statues all over downtown, selected by a group of people working with Secchia.
Okay, I'm guessing that it's all the colonizer statues that I've seen.
The public had no say in any of these statues, even though they are in public spaces.
So like the Stanley Ketchel one down on Bridge, I'm guessing, was probably him.
In addition,
I always wondered, who is this guy? Why are they playing up this white boxer I've never heard of?
In addition, many of the statues are of people who have done significant harm in this community, including Bishop Barriga, J. Van Andel, Arthur Vandenberg.
Yep, I totally concur with all of that, and I'm not surprised that Secchia put them up as heroes. That actually makes a lot of sense now, knowing who did that.
Jeff continues, however, the more important critique we can offer about Pete Secchia was his longstanding commitment to the Republican Party. Secchia was deeply involved in the GOP for decades, especially in West Michigan. He is sometimes credited with growing the GOP in Kent County. This means that since the late 1970s, Secchia has been intimately involved in the political party that gave us Ronald Reagan, George Bush, George W. Bush, and now Trump. These Republican administrations have all contributed to the following: increasing the wealth gap, lowering taxes for the wealthy, waging war on working class people, criminalizing black people through the war on drugs, mass incarceration, environmental degradation, climate denial and climate change, environmental racism, criminalizing immigrants, trade policies which have caused people to flee their own countries, trade policies that have undermined organized labor, waging a war against public sector unions, blaming and shaming women for sexual assault, perpetuating gender inequality, promoting a rape culture, violence against the queer and trans communities, undermining public education, expanding U.S. imperialism, and the so-called war on terror.
Well, kudos to Jeff Smith for always nailing it, because he didn't miss anything there. And Peter Secchia didn't miss anybody either. He marginalized, oppressed, and created violence against all of our most vulnerable people.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be called out. It should be called out. To call him an icon, to set that bar for humanity and normalcy that low, like, come on, you can't let that happen.
By the way, Jeff does note that the Democratic Party has also been responsible for some of the issues below, but since the article is about Secchia and his passing, he was going to focus on Secchia.
And he always nails it.
And said this is only a partial list.
That's what I'm talking about. He doesn't leave anything out.
So he gives two specific examples. He said in this article, first, Secchia was a huge supporter of the George W. Bush administration and was instrumental in bringing Bush and Dick Cheney to Grand Rapids on several occasions. Secchia had a hand in Bush choosing to come to Grand Rapids just prior to the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq in 2003, despite the fact that some 2,000 protesters greeted Bush as he drove down Michigan Avenue. And then later on, Secchia invited Dick Cheney to speak about the U.S. occupation of Iraq at the Ford Museum to an invite-only crowd. So if you didn't get your invitation, you didn't get to see this.
I can't even imagine what it's like in hell, wherever they all are right now.
Yeah,
I hope it's hot. I hope it's really hot.
And then in 2006, Secchia again invited Dick Cheney to speak about the Iraq War. Anti-war organizers found out that Secchia was hosting a gathering at his home in East Grand Rapids. About 25 protesters showed up near Secchia's home to send a message to Cheney that he and the Bush administration had committed war crimes in Iraq, indiscriminate bombing of civilians, destruction of public infrastructure, torture, and looting of Iraqi resources. And then the second example is from 4 years ago, just prior to the 2016 election. Peter Secchia spoke at a rally for Donald Trump. Here's a direct quote from the rally. Quote, "I have a message for the Bushes and Mitt Romney. If you don't want to support Donald Trump, shut up. If you don't know where you are today, you're a loser." End of quote. Wow.
Yeah.
Just like Trump calls them losers and suckers.
You gotta love how he is. He was the Italian ambassador, right? For Grand Rapids or whatever, but wait, no, for the U.S. Right?
Yeah, he was the U.S. ambassador to Italy.
So the U.S. ambassador to Italy, and the biggest white supremacist in town, like literally playing up American patriotism as he is our ambassador to Italy and claiming his Italian heritage as it's trending. You know what I mean? It's just so ironic.
Oh no, I saw the ass kissing that was done for Secchia when I was an intern at Wood Television, because I would help out on the morning show with Liz Vega. And if Secchia was a guest, oh my God, you got to have coffee ready for him, and you got to kiss his ass. And he's an important.
2 minutes late. He was a stickler about time, I've heard.
You know, he's a very important person in this community, and we have to treat him nice. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Liz Vega. Liz was the anchor back then. She's now living in Rochester, Rochester, New York.
Oh, okay.
Because she went there after she left Wood TV, took a job in TV there, and then went into the private sector. But Jeff's last paragraph in this article pretty much sums up my feelings, too. He says, "This is why the local news coverage of Secchia's death is dishonest, because it fails to talk about and assess the vicious and harmful stuff the GOP has done to so many people across the world, in the United States, and in this community. Therefore, I will not mourn the death of Pete Secchia." And I feel that way too, you know? Same.
Like, I'm mourning the death of my own family. Why would I mourn the death of the people that are killing them?
Mm-hmm. When you start mourning the oppressors, that's when you know society is at an all-time low.
It's really sick to me. Like, why would anybody want their children to idolize somebody like that? Like, you're going to get old, and those are the people that are supposed to take care of you. And when they're idolizing such an evil, manipulative, like, sociopathic, greedy, selfish POS, then what do you think they're going to do for you?
Exactly. And speaking of vitriol and hatred, I just want to move on. We talked a little bit about the debate earlier when we first started the show. Lee DeVito has a great article at Detroit Metro Times, and I want to read bits and pieces of this. This is dated October 22nd. Those who oppose Donald Trump, the majority of the country, according to polls, have been accused by Trump supporters of having Trump derangement syndrome, which is one hell of a form of gaslighting. Trump spouts insane nonsense every day, incoherent speeches, grammatically challenged tweets, and a staggering 50 false or misleading statements per day on average lately. And we're the ones who are crazy?
Yeah, it's out of control.
But if anything, it seems like Trump is the one with an unhealthy obsession. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who he once dismissed as that woman from Michigan, seems to have gotten in his head more than anyone since he ran against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Trump has brought up Whitmer repeatedly in the final days of his re-election campaign, calling her a dictator and saying that she needs to open up the state from the coronavirus pandemic shutdown. That's despite the fact that Michigan hasn't been under a stay-at-home order for months, and despite the fact that Whitmer herself has called for Trump to cool down the heated rhetoric against her after a group of domestic terrorists planned to kill her, apparently inspired by Trump's own words. Trump is so psyched out about Whitmer that tough questions from veteran CBS reporter Leslie Stahl during an interview for an upcoming episode of 60 Minutes caused him to have a meltdown and walk off the set, cutting the interview short. Trump leaked a portion of the interview on Facebook for some strange reason, as if it would make him look good. In fact, the segment is filled with more of Trump's falsehoods. Trump criticizes Whitmer for closing churches during the stay-at-home order, which is untrue. They were exempted. He also claims Whitmer exempted her husband from the stay-at-home order, quote, who went sailing and did things that he wasn't supposed to be doing, end of quote, which is a wildly inaccurate summary of a nothing burger of a story regarding a bad joke her husband said. Trump also claims he can't be against Whitmer because it was, quote, our Justice Department, end of quote, that helped Whitmer in the foiled plot against her. In fact, the FBI acts independently from the president. The questions about Whitmer come at the 30-minute mark of the video, and then they go into a... So this is supposedly going to be on 60 Minutes this coming Sunday, which would be the 25th of October. So,
I got to mention it here. Like, he is clearly threatened by female leadership, because that was not the only female name he was dropping last night.
Nancy Pelosi, AOC.
Yep, it's AOC plus 3. He had to talk about how, basically brain dead all women are, which is hilarious to me because it's kind of the segment of voters you're trying to pick up right now, dummy.
AOC plus 3 is probably because he can't pronounce any of the other names because he's an idiot. He is an idiot,
and a racist idiot at that, and a misogynist racist idiot at that.
Yeah, and
but I will say that did bring up a part of the debate that I was a little disappointed in. No, I was more than a little disappointed in, because I feel like this was his chance. With Joe Biden, when they started talking about the fossil fuel industry, and Trump called him out and said, so are you going to get rid of jobs then? If you're going to transition away from oil, are you going to get rid of jobs? And, Biden didn't come back with a solid answer. Then he basically walked it back, because after the debate, his whole support for ending fossil fuels. And I just think that is one point that a lot of the people who have held back on supporting him, it's been a lot about fracking. And he constantly goes back and forth. And last night could have been an opportunity to say, listen, we are going to transition to fossil fuels. We're going to transition these people from these jobs into different ones. But he still is beholden to corporate America. So he couldn't necessarily do that full force.
Exactly.
Which, yeah, it's sad, because we're not in a place right now where we can afford to take risks,
No. as the world is at stake here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just the U.S., it's the entire planet.
And that's the problem. These people are so comfortable, you know, and you're that comfortable. How do you even wrap your head around it where we're at?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad that there was some humanity displayed, but at the end of that conversation, I still felt really ashamed.
Yeah. Oh boy, and then we might as well just talk about the violence that surrounds Trump, because he stokes it up here. We've got two more examples of threats of kidnapping people because of masks and whatever else, political disagreements. I have the first story from Mary Poppenfuss, writing for the Huffington Post. This is dated October 16th. A Wichita, Kansas man has been arrested on suspicion of threatening to kidnap and kill the city's mayor over a COVID-19 measure requiring residents to wear masks in public. The arrest occurred after another city official read a series of text messages he had received about Wichita Mayor Brandon Whipple, according to the mayor. The man who texted him detailed the threat and was seeking information about Whipple's home address. That is according to the Wichita Eagle newspaper. The motive was apparently opposition to mask and tyranny.
Wow.
Here we go. 59-year-old Meredith Dowdy was booked into the county jail Friday evening on suspicion of a criminal threat. And, of course, they talk about, since we're talking kidnapping and killing, they mentioned the militia, the terrorist in Michigan trying to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
So did they had actual evidence of, like, the plan for this person to kidnap?
Well, yeah, there's text messages. Here's what Mayor Whipple told the Wichita Eagle. Quote, he was going to kidnap me and slash my throat, and he needed my address because I needed to see the hangman. Something about tyranny. End of quote.
Oh, my gosh.
So here we go.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
Yeah, this guy is pissed because the Wichita City Council in July passed an ordinance requiring people to wear a mask when in public. And by the way, they were going to back it up with ticketing people not wearing a mask.
Yeah, that's kind of what freaks me out. Like, we all know how the police pick and choose who they're going to arrest.
Yeah.
When people act like this and they start enforcing stuff that the police, it's just like slippery slope, friends.
Yeah. Mr. Whipple, please don't make me put the mask on. Instead of Mr. Whipple, don't squeeze the Charmin, right?
Right.
Oh, my God. And some of you younger listeners out there are like, who's this Mr. Whipple? Yeah, you need to watch some old Charmin toilet paper commercials, folks. One of the greatest characters of all time. Oh, my God.
Kids these days are really missing out.
Oh, yes, they are. They very much are. And then I've got this story. This is Tim Prudenti writing for the Baltimore Sun. This is dated October 21st. U.S. Secret Service agents have charged a Maryland man with threatening a presidential candidate, saying he wrote a letter in which he warns of beating Grandpa Biden, raping Kamala Harris, and targeting the supporters of the Democrats.
What the hell?
Really? They arrested 42-year-old James Dale Reed. Here's what he allegedly wrote. Quote, we have a list of homes and addresses by your election signs. We are the ones with those scary guns. We are the ones your children have nightmares about. The boogeymen coming in the night. End of quote.
Okay, that's creepy.
Yeah, no kidding.
What in the world?
Yeah. The story continues. He's apparently from Frederick, Maryland. He was captured by a home security camera delivering the threatening letter in the middle of the night to a doorstep in Frederick. That is according to Secret Service agents in charging documents. He was arrested last week by Frederick police. He remains held without bail. After agents asked for his fingerprints and a handwriting sample, he confessed to writing the letter because he was upset at the political situation. So he didn't type the letter. He handwrote it.
He handwrote it. That was brilliant, too.
Oh, my God. The idiocy continues. According to the complaint, quote, the defendant, James Dale Reed, knowingly and willfully threatened to kill and to kidnap and to inflict bodily harm upon Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris, who are the major candidates for the office of the President and Vice President of the United States. End of quote. He allegedly explained this will happen in reference to the contentious presidential race and fraught state of national politics. Reed claimed he didn't know the homeowner, but delivered the letter to the first house he came upon with signs with Joe Biden in the yard.
So he just randomly went to the first house with Joe Biden signs.
Yep. Oh, God. This just gets scarier.
Crazier and crazier.
The letter describes in graphic detail violent actions its writer would take against Democrats, an apparent scare tactic against voters. Reed was previously known to Secret Service agents for threatening someone in their protection in 2014.
Oh.
But they didn't list who. Court records don't show who his attorney is. Oh, God. An apparent Facebook page for Reed describes him as a semi-pro bodybuilder in Frederick. Yeah, if you look at his mugshot, I don't know about that.
He might be a little roided out, though.
Could be. In one post last week, he writes about his home being searched. He called Frederick police, quote, a bunch of thugs and gang members, end of quotes.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, broken clocks right twice a day.
That's the truth.
Unless you're Rick Perry and it's only once. Oops. The post reads, quote, I just got my house raided today and my stuff stolen from me because they felt I was a threat to society. Let me add, he has spelled society Societee.
Oh, my gosh. That hurts my head.
And I have made no threat to society, again spelled the same way, but they came into my house, seized my property, seize is S-E-E-S, and stole everything, end of quote. Jesus Christ. Can we send these people back to elementary school to learn basic spelling and sentence structure?
No, we can't, Darren, because we didn't fund the public schools.
Oh, God. Yeah, I gotta stop there. I gotta stop there. This is unbelievable, folks.
Yeah, it really is. So just, I should probably throw this in here. We mentioned that we're on the phone today, but we haven't told you guys why yet.
Yes, exactly.
So my son is at public school district, and I got a call from my sister, because I have a niece there too, yesterday, saying that she was testing her daughter and that there were kids missing in the classroom. So I said, okay, I'm not going to send him. Mm-hmm. Because she was saying that about the day before there were kids missing. So I kept him home, and then I got an email yesterday afternoon saying that they were going to close the school down until at least Tuesday, because they had a lot of people exhibiting symptoms.
Oh, lovely.
So I think the thing that really sketched me out the most is that nobody called me to tell me anything until my sister did. And
of course.
They, and obviously I don't think they've had a positive test yet, so I don't think it's like they were hiding that. But it was just like, I wish I could have known sooner. But at the same time, I'm wondering, I guess, what's happening in other districts, since they're all kind of doing their own thing. I just know that I feel pretty good about our district as far as we've kept the mask mandates through everything. They're doing the social distancing. They've been great about giving us options. But yeah, when that happened and I realized that they didn't even call right away to let us know, I just thought, oh man, we're in so much trouble with flu season starting. So just, be careful, pay attention to what's going on, understand that the health department is overwhelmed. They're not going to be out regulating things as well as they used to. So you kind of got to take responsibility for yourself and your own right now.
Exactly. And I can't stress this enough. Wear a mask. Wear a mask. There is no excuse for not wearing a mask. Oh, I can't find masks. I can find KN95 masks with relative ease, and they're not expensive anymore. The prices dropped because the supply is finally caught up to the demand. Wear a mask. Use hand sanitizer. Get Clorox wipes. I'm finding Clorox wipes all over. I'm finding Lysol spray now.
Yeah, same. It's like things are finally hitting the roof, and the stuff is actually available because people aren't being careful, but you don't have to be one of those people.
Mm-hmm. Get latex gloves. You can find them. When I pump gas, I put a latex glove on. That hand only touches the pump. It doesn't touch anything else until after the glove has been removed.
Same. Yep. That's the way to go.
Yep. And one last thing that I can't stress enough, get a flu shot. Because
okay, you say so. I still haven't done it, but
no, they're readily available. You can go to Rite Aid, you can go to Meijer, you can go to any pharmacy and get one right now. And if you've got insurance, most insurance covers it. Otherwise, it's $25-$30.
So worth it. Worth it.
It is definitely worth it. And this is why we have this story. This is from Bridge Magazine. This is dated October 21st. The author is Robin Erb. Months after being infected by COVID-19, 1 in 4 Michiganders surveyed reported that they had not fully recovered. Rather, COVID survivors report facing lingering illness, heightened anxiety, and economic uncertainty. That is according to a joint study led by the University of Michigan and made public Wednesday.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm. Nancy,
that's not going to...
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, that's not going to look good for Trump recovering so quickly. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Probably help that drug company and Regeneron.
Well, I also want to mention, too, I'm beginning to have my doubts that Trump was even sick to begin with.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's my fear, though, is that when they let that publicly go through the Republican Party, you know what I mean? My fear was that eventually this lunatic is going to come out and go, well, we're all safe because we've had it.
Yeah.
You guys haven't, so we have to.
When they really haven't had it.
Right, exactly.
Because he's playing up sympathy. Oh, my supporters will feel sorry for me.
Well, and he's playing up immunity. Let's be honest. If he's immune, then it's just everybody else that you've got to worry about. So that's a big fear for me.
Exactly. Nancy Fleischer, the lead investigator and a professor at University of Michigan School of Public Health, said this, quote, "We knew that the pandemic has caused a lot of stress and harms the mental health, but just seeing the extent of it has been really striking." End of quote. She continued by calling COVID, quote, "a devastating illness in terms of the physical, social, and economic impact. Many people have been experiencing very frequent symptoms of depression and anxiety," end of quote. Mm-hmm. The Michigan COVID-19 Recovery Surveillance Study will document Michiganders' experiences over time. It is being conducted with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Their first findings were released Wednesday. Researchers said that the data can be used to make informed decisions about how to best support Michiganders during the ongoing pandemic. They've encouraged the state to remain vigilant in social distancing, hand washing, and other safety protocols, but neither the report nor Fleischer discussed other policy implications. I'm going to skip around a little bit here. Doctors have begun to learn more about the lingering effects among the so-called long haulers, but much of the research is focused on patients who have been hospitalized. In contrast, the Michigan survey sought out a broader cross-section of infected people. Just 1 in 3 were ever hospitalized, although 65% described their symptoms during the initial infection as severe or very severe. Others said they were moderate or mild.
Wow.
Yeah. I have a friend, her and her mother both have COVID right now.
Oh.
And she says it's miserable. She's begging people, wear your mask and social distance.
When Chris Christie says that.
Yes. You know? We haven't talked about that. Chris Christie has gone on and said, don't be a fool like I was, wear a mask.
Yeah, I made a mistake, he said. And it's like, okay, wait, like what dream am I in where Chris Christie is admitting to mistakes?
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, boy. In telephone and online surveys of 638 Michiganders who were sick before April 15th, here's what the research found. 26%, 1 in 4, said they have not fully recovered from COVID-19. Half of them report suffering from fatigue, 44% from shortness of breath, 18% from altered taste and or smell.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing, is that the coughing and the shortness of breath just doesn't end. It's months.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, but I know my stepdad, I talked to him last week, and he has been pretty sick for the last month or so, and he's on his second round of antibiotics. And they tested him for COVID, but they said he was negative. But I'm having a hard time believing that when he's been sick this long and it's been through 2 rounds of antibiotics and it's not going away.
Have they tested him for antibodies?
I don't think so, no.
I think he needs to demand an antibody test.
It's a good idea. I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah. Continuing the story here, over half, 53% of all respondents reported worsened stress levels and mental health. Among those who fully recovered, recovery times have varied, ranging from less than 1 week to up to 18 weeks.
That's what I've heard.
And nearly 1 in 5 families struggled to pay bills. 1 in 10 had difficulties getting enough nutritious food. A majority, 60%, said they or their families experienced reduced employment hours or job loss. That's something. They said the participants were selected from the Michigan Disease Surveillance System, which tracks confirmed cases of COVID. The average age of those participants was 52, my age. That's lovely to know. The recollections underscored the chaotic first few weeks of the pandemic when hospitals were overwhelmed, testing was limited, confusion reigned over symptoms and treatment. Nearly 3 in 5 respondents made several attempts before they were finally tested. One person made as many as 10 attempts.
Oh my gosh.
1 in 4 respondents waited more than a week to seek care. 8% said they were turned away. Among those who thought they knew the source of coronavirus exposure, half believed they were exposed at work. 1/4 thought they were exposed by a family member. We're finding people that have been in the hospital for 6 months fighting this stuff.
Oh my gosh. I guess that makes it really easy to see why we're going to run out of beds quick.
Yeah.
People aren't recovering.
And it's raging again. It's on the uptick.
No, it's raging worse than ever before.
Yes. Yeah, Kent County, Jack Prince called me Wednesday and said that Kent County is now in the red zone.
Yeah, we had a brand new peak. It's worse than it's ever been here. And they knew this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And the hospitals are starting to run out of beds.
Yeah.
You know, my mom...
Keep in mind, the worst part is that this happened at the same time last year. So I think a lot of people are going to act like it's normal until it's too late to act like it's normal. And I'm hearing those sirens again. Mm-hmm. Because I just know in April, all I heard all day long, being this close to the hospital, was ambulances. It was really hard. It was terrifying.
Exactly. We're starting to run a little low on time. I want to play a piece of audio for you. This was audio caught on a hot mic before a football game. This is Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who do analysis for Fox Sports and the NFL. I believe this was before the Tampa Bay game last weekend. Here's the audio of it.
Welcome to Big Noon Saturday.
It's a lot of jet fuel just to do a little flyover.
That's your hard-earned money and your tax dollars at work.
That stuff ain't happening with Kamala Biden ticket. I'll tell you that right now, partner.
What do you think about that?
I'll tell you that right now, he said.
That ain't going to happen with them, partner. I'm surprised they have not been roundly criticized by conservatives for that. And I believe that I'll correct myself.
They don't want to bring that up.
I'll correct myself. I believe that happened before a college football game on Saturday because they said Big Saturday. So.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, there's nobody wants to bring that up.
Yeah, I knew you'd get a kick out of that.
That's amazing.
Oh, boy. We are already out of time for this episode. We'll be back next week, folks. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele for Jack Prince.
And for Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.